Saturday, July 13th. Got back from a beach vacation with the family last night after driving it was about 13 and a half hours all told. Looking forward to getting into some colonies. I've already pulled the data from one hive scale, and it looks like they have dried down the nectar from that sourwood flow that we got. They've started picking up a little something new, but I don't know what it is, so I'm not expecting a whole lot more than what I saw the last time I was in here. I don't think they've been on much of a flow. But it definitely looks like the flow came and went. These hives have not really drawn much since the last time I was here. They've started on a bunch of these frames, but they haven't had the nectar to finish them out. So I'm going to try to get them all into at least 2 completely drawn boxes and be heavy before winter. And we're in the summer doldrums already. The bees are acting like that's where we're at. So it gets a lot tougher to get them to draw wax and do anything when we're in the summer dearth. It's probably my least favorite part of the year. So it's really hot. It's going to be in the upper 90s basically the next 4 or 5 days. And then it's going to rain. You know, it'll be 82 for a high, but it'll rain, which makes everything fun. So that means I need to be working bees in the mornings and get all the heavy work done before noon, preferably. I've got a lot that I need to get done. I've got to get around and finish feeding all of my nukes. Nukes being a relative term. I consider a nuke until it's got however many boxes of completely drawn comb that I'm going to put them into winter in. So if it's going to be a 2 medium, once I get 2 mediums done, it's really a hive. You know, if I'm done with them for the year. If there are 3 mediums completely drawn out, then it kind of becomes a hive. I'll start referring to these as mature colonies next year, probably. I'm a little loose in my terminology. I went on that side quest there because someone asked in a comment in a video a week or 2 ago how I can call a hive this big a nuke. Well, it's because I made them this spring. And I've been feeding them a lot, and they're in one of my nuke yards. So I just loosely call them a nuke. So immediate needs are to finish feeding all my nukes. I want them to continue to draw comb and get heavy for winter. And then I've got to get my new shipping container spray foamed and get a window unit air conditioner put in that thing so I can store honey in it. And then get a bunch of stuff out of my honey house and into the new shipping container to store. And then I need to start setting escape boards like end of this week, beginning of next week. This is Saturday, so I guess end of next week or the beginning of the week after that. I'm hopefully within a week or a week and a half of setting escapes and starting to pull honey. I'm late on this. Yeah, it just kind of is what it is, and it's not that big of a deal because we do get that June flow a lot of years, and then the shining sumac is in bloom right now, and I actually am getting a little bit from that. In the last yard I went to, I had several big hives that had drawn 3 or 4 frames on that sumac, so I don't regret, you know, leaving supers out this long. The bees aren't eating into the stores yet. They've been able to maintain weight. But definitely after the shining sumac's done, it's time to get the honey off, or they're going to start eating it through the dearth. I'd rather get the honey off and then feed them sugar syrup if I need to. Sugar's cheaper than honey. A lot of work to get done. Goodness. Short amount of time and a lot of work. June 15th, Trump got shot in the ear, almost had his head blown off. It's just unthinkable. Last president to be shot was Reagan in 1981. I was born in 1980, so that's something new for me. The incompetence is astounding, to the point that you just can't believe that they made that sort of mistake. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm running around shooting oxalic acid into colonies, scraping the coroplast closures on my screen bottom boards so that I can force a mite drop. And I'll go back through tomorrow and start to assess how bad my mite problem is. I know I have a mite problem, I just don't know how bad it is. So we're going to begin that. And I wanted to, I don't know what, complain or talk about the challenges I've got on equipment. I'm in a better position this year than I was last year regarding equipment to handle the workload, to handle the number of hives I've got, and I'm making good progress. But I've still got a long way to go. I've got a new shipping container that I'm going to get spray foam. That'll be storage. It'll be air conditioned. That's great. I'm going to plug it into the current honey house that I've got so that I'll have roll-up doors in between them. I can just roll barrels and drums and bottles and boxes and all kinds of stuff in between them. Then over winter, I want to add a third one and do the same thing, and that third one will be my extraction unit. But I need more drums. The drums I've got, barrel grabs don't hold on to them real well. They're not very secure. So I need different drums. I need a forklift. I need a truck that's, you know, more than what I've got. I've got a first gen Tundra with a payload of 1,600 pounds and towing capacity of like 6,300 or 6,500 or something. I need more truck than what I've got. And I need a bottling machine, big time. I need a labeling machine. And I need inventory. And balancing all that is a real challenge. So focusing my mind again on, you know, what, invest into what makes money. And that's inventory and woodenware. Inventory and more hives make money. If I could get more drawn comb, you know, that makes money. So prioritizing, strategizing, all that. I begin to do a lot of that at this time of year because the season's almost over. You know, there's still a lot of work to be done, but swarming is done. The honey crop is in, it's in the hives. I've still got to get through extraction, but you know, the season is turning over quickly. It's time to start planning for bigger and better things in the future and how to do that economically. I gave this yard a dose of oxalic acid yesterday. So now we're going to do a 24-hour mite drop assessment. This hive's got a bunch of hive beetles. Always has. Seems like you have more trouble with them on the ends of the rows. You see some of those beetles are different sizes. The small ones were basically underfed or malnourished larvae, and the big ones are well-fed larvae. Even the small underfed larvae will burrow into the ground and pupate. I'm seeing a few mites here, but not a lot. All those little reddish oblong dots are mites. It's not a terrible problem on this one. I can get them cleaned up pretty easily. They're handling business. Let's do another one. That one's hard to get out. This one may not show any just because the bees are down here. I've probably got a gap in the screen. The bees can clean those off if they're controlling that, so I don't really know if I've got a problem there or not. Not a ton on this one. It's no real problem. More beetles. Several on here, not a ton. That one's got very few. They must have had, I don't know, they've got, so I've got a concentration of mites right over here, and then pretty evenly distributed the rest of the board. Not seeing a huge problem. This is a problem here. This is one of the singles I got from Bob Benny in the spring. And you can see I've got several of these in this yard. These are all on solid bottom boards, so I can't check the mite drops on them. So it's hard to do IPM in my system like that. I've got a few that are still on double screens like that one, and same deal with them. I need them all on screen bottom boards. The reason I've not switched these over is Bob nails those bottom boards on, and I've not taken the time to disturb a whole bunch of colonies at this time of year to get those bottom boards off and change them out. What I'll do is I'll wait until spring, like February. Most of the bees will be in that box, and the bottom box will be mostly empty, so I can take that off and pry those bottoms off then, and should be able to get them on the bottom boards I want them to be on then. Hate hive beetles. Ooh, that's a problem there. All right, for a hive that small, that's a dirty split that I did this year. It could be they just don't have much sealed brood in here, but that's quite a few mites, especially for a hive this small. So we're gonna give them a red pin. So that I know that they need some help. So these are production colonies. They've all got honey supers on them. And I wanted to force this mite drop just to see if I've got a pressing issue with mites. Doesn't look like I do. These colonies were all made last year, and if I were gonna have a problem, it would be in them. The other 2 yards that I did yesterday are nukes that were made this spring, so they shouldn't have the opportunity to have as much of a problem as these hives do. But we'll see. That's white leaf mountain mint right there. Bees will work that some years. It's not a very good quality honey if it produces anything though. I'm not seeing any of my bees on it. Devil's walking stick is in bloom. Looks like bees are using that a little bit. They're on an orange pollen flow right now. I'm not sure if that's coming from the walking stick or shining sumac or what. But they are bringing in quite a bit of pollen right now. but not a lot of nectar. You can see how this little shrubby tree got its name, Devil's Walking Stick. So I'm going through my nuke yard. This is, I think, my second to last group of nukes. Most of these were made with cells that were dropped on 4/15, and today is 7/16. So they've been here 3 months. They've not been here 3 months, but they have been made for 3 months. And so far, I don't see a mite problem. I didn't clean these boards off before I shot OAV yesterday, but I'm seeing very few mites. I'm not picking out any obvious on that one. And this has been pretty common. I am seeing some hive beetles. The bees are patrolling that. So there's a mite, there's a mite. So there's a few in here, but not a lot. There's one. Very few. I'm not gonna look at any more in this yard. I don't have a problem in here. What I'll probably do is give these hives 1 or maybe 2 more rounds of OAV in the next month, and that'll get them into winter. And then around the winter solstice, you know, December 20th through the first of the year, I'll do my operation-wide round of 3 doses of OAV, and that'll set them up to be good, healthy production colonies next spring. So I've looked at about half the yard. I think that's enough for them. All of these are in a similar condition. You know, they started with 3 to 5 brood frames, or 3 to 5 frames on 4/7. So they've just not had, the math just doesn't allow them to have a tremendous mite population unless they go and rob a colony out somewhere. That's really the only way that they could get a huge mite bomb. So I looked at about half of that yard, and I don't have a problem here. I didn't expect one. You know, it's a nuke yard. I made them on 4/7. They all started with between 3 and 5 frames of bees and brood and honey, and they've built up from there. So they wouldn't have started with a lot of mites, and the math just works so that they're not going to be the colonies that I've got that have a big problem unless they go and rob a hive out somewhere. And it's really not the time of year for that either. Not yet. So this nuke yard has a few more mites than the last yard I went to, because the last yard was made a week or so later. So I'll do maybe 3 or 4 more rounds of OAV in this yard and get them really good and clean. And then I'll just check all of them on that last round and make sure we haven't picked up a mite bomb from robbing anybody out on any one of the individual hives. So what I'm trying to do is IPM per colony. And the only way you can do integrated pest management, I think, and do it right, is to check every single colony. Because you can have 1 or 2 colonies in a yard that has hundreds or thousands of mites, and the rest of them have very few. But then those hives that have a ton will spill over and infect the rest of the yard over time. So finding the worst ones is as important in my breeding scheme as finding the best ones. I'm really not interested in red pinning or green pinning my nuke yards. My criteria for finding breeder queens, I use red pins or green pins on them, but those have got to be queens that have made it through at least one winter and they've made a honey crop and they didn't swarm this year. So queens that I made last year, they overwintered, they didn't swarm, they made a honey crop, I got a split out of them, and they have low mite numbers at this time of year, and they make it through this winter, I'll consider them for breeding next season. So I wanted to add just a little bit to something I hinted at a few minutes ago. Pests and parasites exhibit strong aggregation behavior, meaning that a large percentage of the pests or parasites will be found in a small percentage of the host. So in meat goats, you see 20% of the goats host 80% of the barber pole worms, and barber pole worms are a pretty serious parasite of goats and sheep. In beehives, you'll notice a lot of hives have hive beetles, but a very few hives have a ton of hive beetles. The hive beetles, for whatever reason, aggregate in some hives. Zach Lamas's work has shown that varroa mites aggregate on drones, and I think that they aggregate in particular hives within a yard as well. You can have, three or five hives out of 100 that will just have a ton of mites, and then the rest of them look pretty good. That creates a real problem when you're a commercial beekeeper with 10,000 colonies and you're doing mite washes on 300 colonies a year to determine, whether to treat or not. If you can only do 3%, if you can only sample from 3% of your colonies, well, maybe 10% or 5% of your colonies hold most of the mites. Are you sampling all of those? And if you do, you'll think that you've got a really bad problem. If you don't sample any of those, then you'll think you don't have a problem. Testing and sampling, I think, are the key to doing integrated pest management at scale, economically at scale. If you can find the bad actors, the high mite hives, and get those treated, you're going to lower your mite levels across your entire operation. I wish that more funding and research would be put toward that direction, because I think that would make a big difference in the industry if we had easier ways to find mites.